Let's go to Brisbane and catch up with Nationals MP and former Resources Minister Keith Pitt. Thanks for joining us, Keith. I've got to ask you, as a former Resources Minister, what's your reaction to this warning from Japan, effectively, that they might not want to be involved in LNG contracts or projects in Australia anymore?
Well, what a disaster. After decades, literally decades and millions of man-hours of enhancing, stabilising, entrenching Australia's reputation as a reliable supplier, it has taken the Albanese government just over 12 months to destroy that reputation with one of our greatest ever trading partners. I think this is a really dangerous time for the country. For them to even come out and say that they're looking to go somewhere else because they just can't rely on Australia and its policy settings and they're not sure where they're going, I just think that's diabolical.
Well, obviously they got commercial interests and they're going to try and shake us down for the best deal possible. We've got to understand that. But the government response here seems to have been very flippant. Oh, don't you worry about this. They got nothing to worry about. Of course we need their investment. Of course we need their contracts. What should the government be doing to make sure we keep Japan not just inside, but working in partnership with us?
Well, it's not just Japan, it's everyone that's looking to invest in this country, particularly in the resources sector. If you're in offshore oil and gas, why would you invest literally a decade of your time and potentially tens of billions of dollars in Australia, knowing that they're looking to put you out of business? The Labor government simply isn't supporting the industry. They'll say one thing in one place and something different somewhere else. I think the best thing Anthony Albanese could do is get a new climate and energy minister. That might be a good start. And they should get about and repair these relationships as quickly as possible.
Well, that's the bottom line, of course. There's no shortage of gas around the world. They'll go and get their gas somewhere in America or Qatar or whatever. No one's going to force them to be net zero. They'll just sell them the gas. So this is what kills me about all this stuff. There's no reduction globally in the amount of greenhouse gases emitted or the amount of gas that's burnt. It's just that Australia cuts off its nose. We make ourselves weaker and poorer in the process.
Well, our biggest competitors, China and India, as far as I can remember, they're increasing their emissions. They're not decreasing. They're building coal-fired power stations. They're not closing them down. They're having more manufacturing, more people employed, building their GDP. And yet we have a federal Labor government that seems hell-bent on destroying manufacturing. If you are not internationally competitive, then you are not in the business of manufacturing. You're just not.
Well, what would you be doing? What needs to happen with the impositions that are put on by this safeguards mechanism on LNG projects?
Well, first things first, in terms of the electricity sector, we need to keep our existing coal-fired power stations as long as possible. I mean, those companies who have announced closures are running those assets down. They'll be at a point where they do have issues with the reliability as they come to those end dates. That's bad for all of us. I'd make sure that we do have additional gas production coming on, particularly in Victoria. Victoria is where the big challenge is for gas because they're not developing any of their own. And then we've got to look at the big picture for nuclear, Chris. If you want zero emissions that's reliable, that works, right around the world, many, many countries are moving to nuclear because it meets those criteria.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm thinking this is going to be a very, very central issue at the next election campaign and really worrying signs now for our gas sector in Australia and what international investors and customers think about it. Thanks for joining us, Keith. I appreciate it.